Okay, boys, we are live for a brand new episode of the Goalpost podcast. A very much requested video because these two guys were on last time, but the video didn't come out because of various reasons. But I've got them back on by popular demand. Mr. Afroz Rahman and Nathan Almeida, welcome to the show, man. It's been a while, and
Thank
we
you.
have been talking about making this video for a very long time, but finally it's here, and I think at a good moment because both our clubs are doing quite well. Both are in finals. So not a bad time to banter about our own clubs and thrash other clubs. But uh, our topics for today will be ranging from the ESL, which was a big deal over the last couple of weeks or 2 to 3 weeks, to just the match rate that we've just gone by, UCL, Europa, and the main topic for today, which is, has football gone soft? We'll get into that soon, but before we get into that, I want to talk about the Premier League right now and how United are doing, how Chelsea is doing, and just the state of football right now. Before that, what's up with you guys, dude? It's been a while since we've all talked and we've all been on a call. What's been going on?
Yeah, it's been a while, hasn't it? Been a while since we sat together and put our views together on views across at least, not together. Uh,
Yeah,
and yeah, so what has happened in the past couple of weeks, especially past couple of weeks? Um, the the announcement of the ESL, which was really huge, and it set into motion a lot of things which are spiraling out from that whole instance, which are taking place right now. Like Daniel Elk wanting to buy and take over Arsenal, and at the same time having United supporters protesting, which led to them breaking onto the ground and stopping one of the biggest games in the world, United was Liverpool. So just went out of the way to show their power that the game's about the fans. The fans come first, and it's been intense, especially as a United fan. Um, Although you were happy that these protests have taken place because they're kind of forcing the hand of the owner. They're always like worried at the back of their mind, like how are we going to get punished for this now? And there were rumors floating about of us having 10-point deductions, and that just seems really scary and unfair to me because honestly, the people who are getting the most affected in all of this are the players. They work so hard to reach the point they have, and they've literally earned where they are right now. They are living ups and downs, and they would have been the ones who would have had to face the disappointment of it the most. So I mean, someone always has to lose out, but yeah, it's been a tough couple of weeks, but it does look like there is light on the other side of this tunnel.
right. Nathan, what about you, man? What's been your view about football in the last few weeks?
So, in terms of the ESL, I think all the owners, like the managers, also have been reiterating they realized they made a mistake. They came out, they apologized for it. And of course, there are the conspiracy theories as to why the ESL was made, but let's not get into that. But yeah, I think the owners have taken ownership and taken accountability. But as a fan of football, um, it kind of showed that these owners don't really care about the history of the club. They don't care about the the sacrifices that people have made to bring them to where they are. You can't just break out and have a separate league altogether and transfer titles. That stuff doesn't happen. So it kind of showed that they care only about football as a business, and the fans revolted, and the fans showed that it's not just a business, it's a way of life, it's a passion, it's unexplainable. Why do we love Chelsea? Why do we love Manchester United?
Everybody for the football community, from pundits to fans to just neutrals to football greats to legends, every everybody, welcome back, bro. Everybody was was on football side. Everybody was united to fight against these fucking owners, these businessmen who treated football like Nathan said, like a business, like it was supposed to be for their own profit, and they made themselves bigger than the clubs and bigger than the history of the clubs. So yeah, the positive, but I think there's a much deeper issue, which we'll get to in a bit. Okay, let's move on to the Premier League right now. I mean, there's a big gap in what we predicted and how we thought the Premier League was going to go and how it's actually going. Not in terms of who's going to win, but in terms of the other teams, the top six and the top 10 even. I think everybody is kind of wrong about how things turned out, except me. I was right about Liverpool. I was right about Liverpool, and I'm going. I'm never gonna stop saying it because I predicted the shit of this. But we look at clubs like West Ham, dude. That they came out of nowhere. Everton, they were doing so well. I mean, we kind of expected that given the kind of transfers they brought in. You look at clubs like Aston Villa. You look at clubs like Leeds. Oh my God, Leeds. Oh, I think they're one of the most. I love watching the games. I just love watching the games. It's so freaking entertaining.
They're one of the most entertaining. Yeah.
Love Leeds. But yeah, just the top 10. Look at Arsenal, how far they've fallen. Um, Newcastle suddenly getting second wind in this end of the season. Um, just the overall results have been so weird. Spurs sacking Mourinho, and then now they're in shit creek. What do you think about Spurs? Because I think we spoke about Spurs last time we were on the show together. We spoke about the fact that their system was so reliant on Harry Kane and Son playing like gods on the field for that system to work. What do you think of Spurs now? I think they're pretty much in a huge mess, not just tactically, but mentally, physically, because of losing a manager mid-season. It's very difficult to come back from that unless there's a huge like energy turnaround. What do you think of Spurs right now?
For a club like Spurs, you look at this. They had this whole wave of optimism flowing through the club when they signed Mourinho, and there was this feeling that they're actually going to win something. Mourinho is a manager who's going to take this group of players who've been to many semi-finals, finals, and not won anything, and actually make them win something. And it's kind of all ironic how it all ends with Mourinho getting sacked days before taking the Tottenham team to an actual final against City, which he could probably have won for them. So it was kind of ironic how the whole thing went by, but Spurs is a team on their own. Like I said, that wave of optimism that flew through them, they're going to need another wave of optimism to actually make headway again quicker than they expect, because they need to make up for lost time now,
Mhm.
right?
Is it
And
time
for
for
that
Harry
to
Kane to
happen,
leave? Do you think it's time for Harry Kane to leave?
I think that Kane is
100%.
leaving regardless of what happens at Tottenham. They're going to
Yeah.
lose a lot of players who are going to leave, and they're not going to have any way of getting them to stay back
And
because
and
the whole
any Spurs fan that has something to say against Harry Kane, or if they call him a traitor if he leaves, is not a Spurs fan or is not a football fan, because that man has given his blood, sweat, and tears for that club, and
um
it has
the,
not paid any dividends to him. So I think it is high
the
time he
only
leaves.
way the only way that I believe Kane stays is if he gets sentimental and decides that I'm going to break Alan Shearer's all-time record. Because if he decides to do that, that's the only reason he stays at Tottenham. Because logically speaking, there are only three clubs that can afford Kane: City, Chelsea, and United. He's not going to go to Liverpool, and he's not going to go to Arsenal. He probably won't go to Chelsea because it's literally across
London
London.
private. Yeah.
I don't
So
see that.
you have two teams that can afford him: City and United.
I see
United
City and
can get
United
him.
the most viable.
City may not get him because they have Jesus, they have Ferran Torres, and even though Guardiola has said in the press that he's not looking for a striker, if they get a striker, it's going to be Haaland or no one else. Pep is not going to settle for anyone else, right? And he does have the riches to go and afford that kind of a payment. So the only place he can come to is United, and I don't see him leaving Tottenham just to join United. If he leaves, he's going to leave for
I
Barcelona
agree.
or Madrid or PSG. If he
I
doesn't, the only reason he stays is because he wants to break Shearer's record, and that I can understand because he's really likely to break it if he continues the way he does. He needs another 100 goals to actually make that
Mhm.
reach that record. And for a player like him
And
who puts in 30 to 40 goals a season, that's not impossible at all. So
Yeah,
And I feel a manager like Oli, and if you see the way Edinson Cavani is playing right now for United, we need that number 9. And
Yeah.
as much as I love Cavani and as much as I would like him to stay for next season and all, he's not a long-term option. And so I I hope and I pray that Harry Kane comes to Manchester United, because I definitely see him one breaking Alan Shearer's record in United. And if United are to win the Premier League in the coming years, Harry Kane will be the man to take us there, I feel.
yeah. I
And
think the
hopefully
same thing.
Declan
I
Rice.
think if Harry Kane goes to
Every
United, United win the title next season easily. I don't
100%.
see it any other way because first of all, I think he fits the style quite well. United have a very
Hmm.
pacey counter attack, and it's quite unmatched in the Premier League right now. I think the only other team that can counter that quickly is City. But United with their pace and having that kind of playmaker with that much quality on the ball, who can drop deep, and just
Hmm.
imagine him putting long balls
from
for Rashford and Greenwood on the wings. It's not like they have shortage of people who can do that, but his quality even in the final third, like his predatory
And
instinct of that, like that of
let's
Cavani's.
be real here. Even though we're talking about Kane coming to United, it's not going to happen because knowing United, they are going to extend Cavani's contract, which there are already reports flying around that it's been done. Like it's just made left to be made official. When Cavani
but
stays, the only chance we have of
mhm,
getting Kane is in this summer. If we don't get him now, he goes somewhere else.
he's never going to
And
come. That's
if
true.
you don't get a striker this season, at the end of this summer, that very striker that you're linked with is going to go to your opponent and strengthen them for the next 4 5 years. So it's do or die for United. If we stick with Cavani, we have to be sure we're getting a really good striker the next season, or we're throwing it all on Greenwood to play number 9.
Which
I
is
don't see Kane coming to
so.
United. I don't see it happening. Although it's the most logical choice, I don't see it happening.
Yeah, that's the only reason why I see it happening is because it makes the most sense. Not only on
Mhm.
paper but in terms of him. He has a lot of English players in United. Luke Shaw and Rashford and Greenwood. A lot of English talent there. Aaron Wan-Bissaka as well, and that can just further on build more chemistry. And the Euros coming up, that would help a lot to not only help with Bissaka get into the team, but strengthen the chemistry between them, the understanding between them that probably was not there because they only train once or twice a year. But
Mhm.
speaking of strikers, what about Cavani right now? He's bagging in some like banging goals every single game he's been scoring, and that I
He
mean, I
scored
know you're like
today as
I
well
think I
out
know
of
you're like
nowhere.
conceding one goal every single time, and then you'll score. I don't know why that's becoming like a trend. You'll go down and then you'll manage to come back. And like, every time I see you all like 1-0 down, I'm like, yeah, they're gonna come and score two, and then it just happens. And then like someone like Greenwood just adds to that. Greenwood or James, whoever's playing that day. Um,
Rooney's all-time record, right? I mean, not all-time record, my bad. Rooney's record of most goals scored for a Premier League, for a teenager in the Premier League.
who's that?
Join.
Oh
Greenwood.
yeah, he broke it.
Yeah, today was the breaking record.
Oh,
He
nice,
has
nice.
another 5 months to break the record for a teenager of all time. He has to score another 10 goals in the next 5 months to beat George Best and another. I don't remember his name, although he is the top scorer. But I think he's Edwards. I can't
Madness,
remember
madness.
his name. He's if we look at 5 months to score 10 goals for Greenwood, do you think it'll happen?
You're talking about young talent. There are two Masons and there's one Phil Foden, and they're all English.
It's dude. Let's talk about the Euros.
Two of them.
The Euros are gonna be banging for England right now because they have such a huge plethora of players they can choose from. If Gareth Southgate fucks this up, I swear to God,
It's
I
now
will.
or never.
It
It's
is now or
now or
never,
never
right?
for him.
The everybody is like reaching some new heights, some new levels. This season has been a very very defining season for especially for English players. Not only because now
Yeah.
it's an all English UCL final, but just in general,
Has been for the past couple of years, to be honest.
it has
No,
been
and
happening
you
for the
also
past
you
couple.
look at the heart.
England has started dominating again, and as much as the La Liga fans
Hmm.
would hate to say it, their time is over.
Bro, that's
This
what I'm saying, bro. Travis needs to shut the fuck up, bro.
we all actually remember the time. So like even though so the time that you had the English league thriving, you didn't have La Liga thriving as much as the English league, right? And now
Mhm.
then there was La Liga dominance, and now the English are back. Soon there might be
There
Italian
was
dominance.
the when Germany won the World Cup as well. Remember when Germany won the World Cup? I think the next year, the season after that was Bayern and Dortmund in the Champions League finals,
Yeah,
Yeah.
and there was 100% German domination for that that era.
that's limited.
And yeah, but yeah, I think it's now or never for England. They have the perfect balance of experienced players and young players, and they have those two boys, Mason Mount and Phil Foden.
Right. So I want to talk about this one thing that has been nagging me for the last month or so. It's related to VAR, but something a little deeper because I was trying to think of what's my issue with VAR? What's the real issue? Because it's not just VAR. VAR looks at technicalities and really fine margins because it's a game of margins nowadays. It's a very tactical game. Um, but what I've noticed is football is gotten extremely soft. Not sure whether it's the societal thing that has come kind of made its way into football,
Hmm.
or it's just
That's that.
football right now because of these tiny margins. But I've been noticing players going down so easily and penalties being awarded for that. Tackles that wouldn't have been yellow cards ever in the history of time now are yellow cards. People are being sent off. Follow throughs are now like something people have to think about as well. um, Also, offsides, that is like a huge deal now, especially with so many offside goals marginally be counted off, especially like if their arm and stuff. I don't know where they calculate the offside from. Sometimes it's the arm, it's the line is just so vague.
The
um
armpit, I think.
I don't have no clue, bro. But I think the deeper issue is that football's gotten soft. The pundits
Hmm.
say it in like a little more I don't know, nuanced way, but the crux of the matter is that football has gotten super soft. And
It has.
can you really blame the players? I don't know, because players are just playing the game. You can't hate the players, hate the game.
Hmm.
Uh,
Look at it this
but
way. Yeah.
sorry,
Continue. I'll wait for you to finish.
yeah, my thinking is that because of society, as a society, we've moved towards a little more inclusive, a little more open, a little more uh, easier place to live in quote unquote. uh, this has kind of moved and found its place in football as well, and it's a good thing in certain circumstances, like the anti-racism movement. With that, obviously, that's a good thing. I am obviously obviously for it, as much as Travis thinks I am against it. But my issue is with the abuse and the things like that. I don't know how much I agree with that, because like this is just social media. Before, it was in the stadiums. Like, I don't know, have players forgotten the abuse they get in stadiums at away games? I'm sure. Like, I remember Frank Lampard talking about him getting like West Ham fans calling a fat boy when he was at West Ham, and the kind of abuse he got there in person, not even on social media, which is like 10 times worse. So football's definitely gone soft in my eyes. What do you guys think about this, and where do you think it's coming from?
Look at it this way. Before a person turns in, before a person experiences an event which turns him into a professional footballer, before that event takes place, that person is still a person who is exposed to society around him, and that's what shapes his personality and his views about what happens around him and how he interacts with those things. So
Hmm.
the world around us has been constantly changing, even faster in the past decade or two, because there have been things that have accelerated, things that have been catalysts in in that development and that change. And like David rightfully said, the 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 new rules of involving everyone, nothing wrong with it. It's obviously the right step taken, to take forward and go ahead and be a more inclusive society of all kinds of people. But in doing that, we have taken a lot of things that would generally be kind of harmful for a footballer. Like, since you're talking about footballers, let's stick to footballers, right? Things that would possibly be harmful for footballers, and we've let it pass. Things like, being having an aggressive streak in you. of wanting to be dominant on the field. Very few players have that anymore. The likes of Roy Keane, Patrick Vieira, let's say your Didier Drogba's, your John Terry's. You don't have those kind of players anymore who want to go out there and prove it to the other person that I
Mm-hmm.
am the best in my position. What are you gonna do about it?
100%.
So that that is why we would love football to an extent as well, right? The sheer passion with which a footballer would stand his ground, and that would make you look up to him and be like, okay, that's my captain. So
Yeah.
things like that are frowned upon. If a player wanted to get in, when got into an altercation, people would be like, why did you even fight? Why did you have to do this, that? But the point of it is, when you play a sport which requires you to be aggressive, which requires you to make physical contact, if you're going to take the very aspect of aggression away from it, and aggression is not a bad thing. It's just that aggression can take on other forms which are bad. But if you take away things like that from a sport which is basically based on physical contact, you're killing the sport. You're not playing the sport anymore, and that's the biggest problem. But the fact of the matter is, even though I may feel this way, society as a whole is going to say that violence is bad. You're not supposed to do this,
Yeah.
and this will happen. So it needs collective. It needs a collective change in mentality all over the world. How people stood together to fight the ESL. People need to stand together to fight people killing away the very sport we love. Because it's like they're going to change the whole game, but it's still going to be called football, but it's played like cricket. I mean, you kill the sport, right?
Yeah. Nathan, why don't you speak about like the aggression part? Because that's something that I've noticed as well. Not only in football, it's in society as well. Like, this whole idea of toxic masculinity, the fact that like people shame men for being aggressive. Obviously, that's not a bad thing in my eyes, because aggressiveness is a trait you need to progress in life. You need to be aggressive about your job,
Survival of the
about your,
fittest.
yeah, about yeah, survival basically. It's tough scene out there for everybody, and you need aggressiveness as a trait to find your place in this world. And aggressiveness 100% makes its way into sport, especially football. And what do you think about this? I completely agree with, of course, with the aggression point. You see players talking to the ref, and see people are complaining. How can you talk to the ref like that? That would get him send off. And I don't know why that's even an issue. Like you see Bruno Fernandes, like with like every time a foul goes against him, he will go and talk to the ref like super aggressively, and fans would say give him a red card, give him a red card. And a lot of players do that.
Mm-hmm.
Aspilicueta does that. I remember this guy from Spurs. I don't know if you remember Musa Dembele. He used to do that a lot.
Like
Um,
a brick wall.
Brick freaking wall, dude. These kind of players, the hard guys are like just
Mm-hmm.
slowly deteriorating away from football. What do you think about that?
Exactly. So I think that, like you said, with the introduction of VAR, it's the games become really technical. So you don't really have your hard players. Like if I had to pick like a really a hard player right now for Manchester, I can only probably think of Scott McTominay, who's got that like
Cavani.
madness mentality. Yeah, Jamie Vardy, but Jamie Vardy still comes
There's
under
Cavani.
the old Cavani. Yeah, but he also still comes under the previous generation, right? I'm talking about the current flock.
Right.
So it's gotten really technical, and that's why you don't really have players with that kind of mentality. Also, I think I'm sure you don't have that aggressive mentality anymore because everything is technical. One small touch, you can go down, you get a penalty for it. And the problem that I have with VAR is that it was brought in to eliminate human error, but it's still a human being sitting behind that computer, measuring and looking and feeding the referee his decision. So you're not really taking away human error, you're just adding another level to it. So in terms of, yes, football has definitely gotten soft, where a small touch, someone will go down, someone will yeah, I won't really say dive because it's not really, you don't really have many people diving anymore because of VAR, but they know that the camera will capture it in slow motion, and the smallest, most feeble of touches can look really dramatic in slow motion. And so you see someone getting nudged and they'll go down. And even Bruno is guilty of it. So people may call him a diver and people say he like plays for the penalties. And maybe he does. I don't care because he plays for United. But yeah, football has gotten soft in terms of you don't have the hardcore battles anymore. You don't have Nemanja Matic breaking his nose on the pitch. You don't have, like you mentioned, John Terry and
I think you meant to say
hundreds
Nemanja
of
Vidic.
others.
Yeah,
Yes, what did I? I said Matic,
Matic.
didn't I? Yeah, Vidic, Vidic. So
Yeah,
yeah, so in terms of that, it's gotten really technical, and that's why it's gotten soft. So even in terms of like you see the old Brazilian squad of the Samba boys, you see Ronaldinho, you don't really have that crop of players also anymore because a good example would be Richarlison. Richarlison, I don't know how you pronounce his name. You
yeah,
don't.
that's right.
He doesn't look like a Brazilian player. He doesn't play like a Brazilian player, the Brazil that we know. Because I feel Neymar is the last guy to have that the samba miss about it.
Yeah,
Because I feel football's definitely gotten much more tactical, much more how do
system
you put it?
oriented.
Yeah,
See,
Yeah,
and
joining into
even
what
in
you're
terms
saying,
of Mhm,
with football, the way it has been, like years ago, before the Johan Cruyff era, where he revolutionized football. Before that, even football started off from the main point of wanting to be dominant on the field and wanting to be the so dominant that you're the best in that aspect. And
mhm,
that has slowly changed into tactical brilliance, where footballers need to be smart in terms of having to
exactly.
understand the game from a manager's point of view to be able to play that role well. And in doing that, things like diving or doing tactical fouls, which would generally be frowned upon, have become
Mhm,
acceptable. It's like like there were times where nowadays you have so many teams that even though there is an opponent injured on the field, they will still continue to play because like they're doing nothing
mhm.
wrong according to the rules. But like think about it, a couple of years back, decades ago, if that was to happen, would it even matter? Like a Liverpool United game, Van Dijk gets
Mhm.
an ACL injury, let's say, the United players nowadays will put the ball out. Imagine if that
Yeah,
happened back in the day where
the
Liverpool
fans
still
would
had
give
a
them
continental
hell for it.
title. Yeah, and it would be horrible. So the whole point of football becoming soft is also us as an audience becoming soft as fans, and that's something only we as fans can really change.
do you
So
think that's like
there
part
are
of
also
like what society is like going soft as well, right? That fans are an extension of that. So, like I mentioned, the whole like toxic masculinity thing, like that, I think plays a huge role in football as well, because of how we are taught to dole out respect to people just because they're human beings. I don't know. Gone are the days where you earn your respect as a person. I don't know where that's disappeared now. You earn your respect by having certain beliefs and living out those beliefs. You don't get other people's respect otherwise just for existing. Now all of a sudden you just walk into a room and you expect to be respected. I don't think that's the case at all. Players nowadays apparently do think that, and the systems are following suit. Besides that, I want to talk about players right now. Obviously, the players, even though they have certain players have an aggressive streak, and which is a good thing. Like players like Bruno Fernandes, for example, you see him like going after the referee for a bad decision or a decision that could have gone his way,
fighting for his
and
team.
yeah, fighting for his club, and I completely respect that as even as a rival fan because as much as I don't know, there are certain players like you mentioned who play for the penalty, play for the foul. That happens because maybe the rules are like you look at some of the younger players who don't do that and they don't get penalties. They don't get these fouls because they don't make a scene out of it.
They don't
um
make it
Mhm.
convincing enough for the
they
referee
don't
to
make it
give them a
convincing enough
penalty.
for the referees, and that now that's looked upon as naive, which is so
Yeah.
weird. Which is so weird. You look at the pundits talking about that's naive that
So
he didn't go down and make a scene out of it. How,
mhm.
what? That's so. When did that happen? I was so shocked when I heard that.
So there's two aspects to football going soft. One is of course the physicality of it, and you also look at the mentality of the players. And so a good example would be Jose Mourinho in the past. He sidelined Samuel Eto'o for one whole month, and he's tried that in other clubs as well, and he's tried that with different players. But Samuel Eto'o was the kind of player that if you sideline him for a month, he will work his ass off to get back into the manager's books. He's not going to sit and cry and complain and piss and moan as to why the manager isn't selecting me, which is the same fallout that I guess Mourinho had with Pogba, Luke Shaw, Dele Alli, and I could, like, the list goes on and on. But so the mentality of the players where they don't just sit back and cry about, oh, the manager didn't select me, oh, this went wrong, that went wrong. They find it within themselves and work on that. So I think in terms of mentality, also the football and football players have gotten soft. Um, that being said, however, I wouldn't say that it's gotten soft really. You just have to know how to manage the players. Like you take someone like Thomas Tuchel, he seems to have understood the mentality of his squad. So he's taken the exact same squad that Frank Lampard has and made them Champions League finalists. And someone like I mentioned, Luke Shaw, who was sidelined by Mourinho and didn't perform really well or didn't perform at all under Mourinho because he just probably sat and felt bad for himself and said, why is the coach sidelining me? I'm doing nothing, blah, blah, blah. Whereas a coach like Oli understands the psyche of his players and how to get the best out of them no matter what. So maybe to some player, ghosting them and not putting them in the team selection for 1 month will break them. And maybe another player needs an arm around his shoulder and says, you got this.
Yeah.
So
In my
I
opinion,
feel,
continue.
continue.
In my opinion, one of the major differences between players of this generation and players of generations of the past has been stuff and things like the influence of social media. When back in the day,
Mm-hmm,
you didn't have social media, right? You don't have a way of communicating with thousands and hundreds and millions of people at one time. You don't have those
mm-hmm,
options with you. You had to do things in a very systematic way. You had to go through certain channels. Nowadays, you have so many different sources of exposure that you can
mm-hmm.
get exposed to in the matter of minutes. Go onto or to Instagram and look at the amount of posts people are posting per minute. The amount of people posting at the same time, putting stories up, putting reels up. You have so many people directly influencing your views on life. You're looking at things, you're understanding it, interpreting it, and storing it back in your mind in some way or form, right? So those things are eventually leading to the construction of your opinion and how you look at things and your perspective on life in general. Things like social media being a part of football, you have so many different people coming across and sympathizing with you when you've done something wrong. Neymar diving to get penalties, diving. I mean, that's not the opinion that I have that Neymar is a diver. I'm just taking it as a topic of conversation right now. Neymar diving to
Mm.
get penalties. Uh, let's say that a player like Neymar existed 20 years back or 30 years back. Him diving would not even be looked upon by the fans. Like, how would the fans tell him that no, that wasn't a dive, that was an actual foul? How would fans communicate to him when
You
they
get
met him
your
face?
feedback on the pitch itself. So
Yeah,
that's
and
actually
any
a good
player's
point that you
feedback
brought
wouldn't
up.
matter, right? Only the
Hmm.
manager's feedback and the people around you that you cared about, their opinions would matter, and they would actually tell you what's right for you, not what
Mm-hmm.
my opinion is on it. So nowadays, with the influence of social media, you have so many people condoning what you've done, which is actually wrong. That's right. The use of racism in football has always been there. People have always been racist. People have always been ignorant of other cultures and diversities. But that doesn't mean that it's something that has not been a part of what has been happening all along. It's all a cycle which has led to the situation we're in currently. If UEFA and FIFA and all the governing bodies were so concerned about racism, whatever has happened right now in the last year and a half could have happened years ago. It's just that the people have made an outrage about it, and now it is getting highlighted. So it's it's more about, wow, it's more about your influences around you. And like I said, we as fans have to start embodying the values and cultures we want in this sport in order for them to actually be implemented. Because if we don't see eye to eye with the same principles, we can't expect these footballers and these governing bodies to do that. We simply can't.
Yeah.
So you spoke about social media also. Coming back to the feedback you get on the pitch itself. So, for example, if me and David are playing today, we get into it with each other. Back in the day, there was no social media. There was no, like you said, the 1,000 people to support you or to be against you. I have a scene with David, and it's done and dusted on the pitch itself. When we walk off, we're still friends, we're still rivals, whatever. Whereas now, if a player has to get into it with another guy on the pitch, he's hearing about it for the next week, the next year or so, maybe.
Yeah.
And he probably will never be able to live it down. So that also could be another reason as to why football is going soft, because you can't, not that you can't in the moment, of course, you do let out or show your passion, but in terms of just going at it, I feel you can't really do that anymore.
Yeah, 100%. I think it all starts with, like you mentioned, a disagreement is part and parcel of the sport. That's why there's competition. That's why teams fight against each other, and it's all part and parcel of what we love about the sport. And it's all of a sudden it's moving past what the sport is, and it's moving into society. It's unfortunately doing this. This is happening now in a society that is, in my opinion, a bit weaker than it used to be. People are a bit more sensitive to these things. I think as like the move forward is to continue having dialogues. Then that's why I'm such a huge advocate for freedom of speech. Um, we need to continue having these dialogues like on the podcast, or
That's what we need to promote racism, right?
I hope not. That's not my intention, but yeah, basically I think that it all starts with these kind of dialogues, with having people on that you disagree with. Like, look at this, man, I'm a Chelsea fan, I'm bringing two United fans. Shit. Who'd have thought? But I'm glad that I brought you guys on. I think this is a good a start to like a massive dialogue that needs to be going through the entire football community. Everyone needs to be talking about this, and I think we will talk about this much more. The season's not yet done. A lot more to look forward to. So I think we're going to end it here. I think we've spoken quite a lot, covered a lot of topics, and thanks guys for joining. It's been an honor to host you guys here. If you guys like this kind of content and you want to see more of it, make sure to let us know in the comment section below, and drop a like down, subscribe. We are on the road to 100 subscribers. Thank you all for your support and for all your suggestions. And if you want these guys on the show again, let me know. I will.
David, it was an honor to be on the goalpost, and thank you for having us.
If you made it this far in the video, comment hashtag the Chelsea goalpost down below in the comments.
Let's get it trending on Twitter.
Let's do it.
Anyway, thanks everyone for joining in.
Thank
If you
you,
made it
thank
this
you.
far, the audience retention rate is quite decent. So I think the fans supporting the channel are they're quite hardcore people. So thanks guys for joining in. I will see you in the next one.